Why, hello there, and welcome back into the only sports talk show that really matters right here on IUP-TV. It's The Big Hit. As always, I'm your host, Joshua. We've got a ton of sports to discuss here tonight, and we'll discuss some sports we normally don't here this evening, so it should be a lot of fun. We will begin in the world of college basketball and preview the final weeks of the regular season with the upcoming NCAA tournament. Take a look at who could potentially be a #1 seed headed into March Madness, and then we will look at the NFL Combine as the NFL's best have gathered in Indianapolis and examine the performance of Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston. We'll also check out some tremendous metrics that one player put up and ask a couple of questions about him as well. And then we will send it to the local side of things here, talking IUP basketball. Look at the biggest threats to the IUP Crimson Hawks with the upcoming PSAC tournament. And then we will move into the fast lane, ladies and gentlemen, talking some NASCAR here, the Daytona 500 this past weekend. We will recap that race and look at an interesting confrontation that happened afterwards. And then we will close the show out talking some NBA basketball, recap a very active trade deadline for a lot of teams, and give a brief prediction of who we think can win the NBA title. Ladies and gentlemen, so much to talk about, and it all starts right here on The Big Hit. And hello, ladies and gentlemen. Without any further ado, we welcome you back to the only sports talk show that really matters right here on IUP-TV. It's The Big Hit. Josh Schill here with you, and we're going to lead off our discussion tonight with some college basketball talk. And joining us for that, it is Kelsey Howell and Kyle Condor. And guys, let's start with the #1 ranked team in the country, because that seems like a great place to start. The Kentucky Wildcats, 27-0, the best start in program history for the Wildcats. Only 4 games remaining this season. One of them, though, is against SEC foe Arkansas, who is ranked number 18th in the country. So my question to you is, how realistic is it that the Kentucky Wildcats can finish the year undefeated?
Well, I think it's really realistic when you look at the remaining schedule. The only team possibly able to beat Kentucky will be Arkansas, just because Arkansas is a 15th ranked offense, and they're also top 10 in assists. And they also have Bobby Portis, who is their best player and who's probably the real NBA talent on their team. He's averaging 17.4 points a game and 8.7 rebounds a game. So I think if they're able to get the ball to Bobby Portis and able to hit the three-point shot, they have a chance. But Kentucky, they're continuing rolling. The last 3 games, they won by an average of 20 points a game. And coming off those scares recently, a few weeks ago, I think they're as high-powered as they're going to be this year, so I don't see them losing a game.
Yeah, Kelsey, for sure. You said it perfectly. I mean, anybody's capable of losing. They're in a Division I basketball conference, the SEC. It's not the strongest conference in all college basketball, but it's a strong conference, so there's always the chance that they can lose. I don't think it's going to happen, though. Of course, you mentioned Bobby Portis on Arkansas. He's their NBA talent, but that's about all they've got as far as NBA talent is concerned, whereas Kentucky is full of it. So they've got an entire roster full of NBA talent, and they're playing in an SEC conference that's not nearly full of teams as strong as they are. So at this point, I don't think they're going to lose, at least in their last 4 games, and they should smooth sail through that conference tournament as well.
Yeah, so let's continue talking about the Kentucky Wildcats, because anytime a team does something remarkable, there are of course going to be critics, there are going to be detractors, and many of those detractors are saying that the lowly SEC is one of the main reasons that Kentucky isn't prepared for the NCAA tournament this season. So do you think that Kentucky Wildcats are prepared to face off against top-notch teams in other major conferences playing that schedule of SEC games this year?
I think so. With the games they played earlier, they had 3 victories against teams in the top 10. And with those victories, they won by an average of 10 points. Because of those victories against Kansas, Texas, and Louisville, which are teams that are probably going to be either top 4 seeds in each of their conferences, I think because of that experience early in the season, they should be ready to play the tougher competition in the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I'm definitely one of those critics, Kelsey. I'm going to have to disagree with you, and that's because those big wins came very early in the season against teams that are very young. Texas is a young team. Kansas, not quite a young team, but there are players there that had to get used to a new system, one that did not involve Andrew Wiggins, who was a big part of that team last year. So Kentucky saw a lot of those good teams toward the beginning of the season, and I think that now that those teams have had time to gel, they're going to be more prepared to play Kentucky, whereas Kentucky has been playing in an SEC conference throughout all of the 2015 part of the season, and they haven't played against teams that they're going to see in the later rounds of that tournament. So I think they might be a little caught off guard when they see a team like Duke maybe down the road in the Final Four or something like that, because they haven't seen a team like that in quite some time. So yeah, I'm definitely one of the critics that thinks Kentucky is not really prepared fully for the tournament. The talent is definitely there, but it's tough when you haven't played a great team in so long to just play one when the opportunity presents itself to you.
Well, with that, Kentucky also had a chance to gel. Like, they're a young team. I think their oldest player is Willie Collins-Stein. He's a junior.
Yeah.
So I think with his experience and his leadership with the young talent and the overall platoon system they have, I think overall they should be good to go when the NCAA tournament time comes.
Yeah, and also off the Kentucky Wildcats, there's only really one way to go for them, and that's down, considering the start that they've had, really championship or bust mentality. But let's go ahead and switch our perspectives in terms of conferences here, talking about the ACC. We love the ACC here on The Big Hit, and why wouldn't you? Many consider it to be the best conference in college basketball. Currently 5 teams ranked in the AP Top 25. Virginia, Duke, Notre Dame, Louisville, and North Carolina, all teams ranked and in the ACC right now. So with the ACC tournament coming, with the NCAA tournament coming, which of these teams do you believe is the best in the Atlantic Coast Conference?
Well, I believe Duke is the best in the Atlantic Coast Conference just because of their overall talent. Now, Duke defensively isn't one of the top teams in the nation, especially Jahlil Okafor, who isn't much of a rim protector. But with Tyus Jones, Quinn Cook, and Jahlil Okafor, I think they should be good enough to get past the ACC Conference. You got Louisville, who they beat earlier in the season. You have Notre Dame, who they lost to at Notre Dame. But I think Duke, especially that tough game against North Carolina earlier in the season, I think because of that, they should be ready to take that record into the conference championship game.
The ACC is stacked, and I mean, it could really be any team at any given moment that you could call the best in that conference. And I'm going to pick Duke as well. Now, I'm not saying they're going to breeze through the ACC tournament. I'm not even saying they're going to win out throughout the rest of the season. But one thing you mentioned, Kelsey, is how they have young talent in Tyus Jones, Justice Winslow, Jahlil Okafor. Like I said about Kentucky, beating the teams that are that good, a lot of the good teams like Duke are young, and it took them time to gel, and they've gotten to this point in the season now, and they're ready to go. I mean, these kids know what it takes to play and compete at the Division I level. So I think Duke is definitely the best team in that conference. The reason they're not in first place in that conference is because it took them a little while to gel, but I think they're locked and loaded now, ready to go.
Right, and the one thing with Tyus Jones is previous history in NCAA tournaments, you need that one-star guard to take your team to the promised land. And he showed in the North Carolina game that he has that potential. And in other games, in Louisville, I think he had 21 points in that game, and that was a big game. So I think with his overall talent and confidence, I think they should be good with that.
Yeah, and while Quinn Cook is not the best player talent-wise on that team, his leadership has shown this season. I mean, he is a great leader, and I think he's one of the players who helped develop the freshmen around him. So
yeah, Duke as a team really just looks unstoppable right now, but it is worth noting that a Virginia team with Justin Anderson is much better than a Virginia team without Justin Anderson. So whenever he is able to come back, that will be certainly something to watch. And you can't forget about teams like Syracuse and Pitt, maybe a little bit further down in the standings, but have proven on a night in and night out basis that they can really compete with just about anybody in the country. So let's look at the top 25 rankings, or in particular the top 4. Kentucky, Virginia, Gonzaga, and Duke are currently the teams holding those 4 spots. Do you believe these 4 teams will be the number 1 seeds heading into the NCAA tournament, or will there be a change somewhere?
I believe that Gonzaga is going to fall out of the top 4 because right now Wisconsin and Villanova are behind them. And I have Villanova as my dark horse. I thought Wisconsin would be able to sneak into the 4th spot, but right now they're having a tough battle against Maryland. So if Wisconsin is not able to win out and Villanova is able to win out, I think Villanova can take over Gonzaga's spot for the number 1 seed.
Yeah, it's definitely a little premature to talk about this at the moment. It's definitely relevant. And I say that because the top 4 teams right now are teams that are elite in college basketball. I think the top 4 is definitely the best 4 teams in basketball, but a lot rides on how they do in their conference tournaments. We just talked about the ACC, and Virginia and Duke are in the top 4. In my opinion, there's no way both of those teams are going to be number 1 seeds in the tournament because they can't both win the ACC conference. I think whichever one wins the ACC conference slides in to a number 1 seed. Whichever one does not is no longer a number 1 seed, which opens up room for teams like Wisconsin. Obviously, they're in a tough battle against Maryland right now. A lot rides on that game. And then you have Arizona. They can easily win their conference. So if Wisconsin or Arizona is able to win their respective conference, and Kentucky, one of the 2 ACC teams in Virginia or Duke, wins their conference, and Gonzaga wins their conference, obviously that's most likely going to happen. I think you're going to have to win your conference to get a 1 seed in the tournament this year. I think that's where I'm going with this whole situation here.
Yeah, you finally maneuvered your way to where you had to go, but a little bit of bracketology involved in all this. You talk about the conferences. Maybe the committee doesn't see teams like a Gonzaga as a legitimate number 1 seed, and plenty of different teams to follow suit. The same can be said for Northern Illinois and Wichita State. The conference they play in may certainly dictate their seeding and work against them as far as seeding is concerned in the NCAA tournament. But gentlemen, we will leave it here, talking college basketball and crashing the boards with Kelsey Howell and Kyle Condor. We will take a break, get our stopwatches out, and hit the NFL Combine when we return right here on The Big Hit. Don't go away.
Want to learn more about IUP-TV? We have the solution. IUP-TV is now online on Facebook. You can find us by simply searching Facebook for IUP-TV. Once you click like, you can check out your favorite shows on our IUP-TV showcase, view our broadcast schedule, get updates on everything about your favorite station, and tell us how much you love your favorite shows. IUP-TV, not like other stations.
And welcome back into The Big Hit, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to head to Indianapolis and talk some NFL Combine here in our Red Zone recap. And joining us for that, it's a good crop of analysts as Sean Fritz joins us here, and Andrew Friend also makes an appearance. It's his Big Hit debut, and it's a great time to make your debut here as we talk some NFL Combine. We'll begin with one of the biggest storylines in the NFL Combine, that of course being famous Jameis Winston. Very impressive showing for him at the Combine. Really, it's a simple question. Do you believe there's any chance that he's not the number 1 pick in the upcoming NFL draft?
I think it's a 50-50 chance right now. I think, as we all know, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft. It's going to be on April 30th. So I think since they need a quarterback, I think we all know they need a quarterback. It's either going to be Marcus Mariota or Jameis Winston. I think Jameis Winston really fits the pro-style system that a lot of teams run, including the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The big question, though, is going to be him becoming a professional. You know, obviously we all know about his issues in college, his off-the-field issues. And moving forward, he's going to have to mature a lot and kind of grow up. He's not a little kid anymore, and it's time for him to step up, be responsible for his own actions. And I think that's definitely going to that definitely has to weigh on the mind of, if you're the front office members of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, do you want somebody like that being the face of your franchise right now? I think that's the question. So, I mean, no doubt he definitely has the talent and the ability. As I said, he's that pro-style quarterback that a lot of teams are looking for right now. So I think there's definitely a good chance that he's the number 1 pick, but also it could be Mariota.
I like exactly what you said there. The Buccaneers do need a quarterback. However, I believe there is zero chance that Jameis Winston makes it the number 1 draft pick overall. I believe with his off-field disciplinary actions, such as the sexual assault, yes, that was dropped. His BB gun incident, shoplifting, not 1 occasion, but 2 occasions. We also have a whole bunch of vulgar comments that he's made. The guy's just a mess, is what I'd like to say. I don't think he's going to make it the number 1 pick because of that reason solely. He needs to clean up his act, and then maybe he can make it somewhere in the NFL.
What a way to start on your very first show. Andrew Friend dropping fire on Jameis Winston. And one thing, if Jameis Winston is the number 1 overall pick, it could be a good thing, it could be a bad thing, keeping him in the state of Florida. He really needs a support system for sure. He needs a little bit of time to grow up and mature. Maybe keeping him in Florida helps, maybe it doesn't. We'll have to see what Tampa does with the number 1 overall pick. But of course, anytime you mention Jameis Winston, you want to mention the other quarterback as well, and that's what we'll do right now, because Jameis Winston's performance leaves some room for Marcus Mariota to fall further back in the draft than a lot of people expected. And of course, the rumors running rampant that the Philadelphia Eagles were looking to trade up to get him. So with that being said, do you think the Philadelphia Eagles will trade up to get Marcus Mariota? And if so, what will they need to get up to get Marcus?
I think it's going to be really, really tough for him. Obviously, with Winston being declared kind of also a choice for the number 1 pick, that means Mariota will fall. I don't think he falls out of the top 10, maybe even the top 5. I mean, I know there's some teams in between Tampa Bay and the New York Jets who don't really need a quarterback right now. But like I mentioned, the New York Jets are definitely looking for a quarterback. I think they've got some other issues, most notably up front. Their offensive line seems to give their quarterback problems, whoever it is, whether it's Michael Vick or Geno Smith. So I think that's definitely an issue. Whether they feel that they can fix that by drafting over Geno Smith, I guess that's up to them. But I don't think he falls past the New York Jets. And if he does, I think it's definitely possible for the Eagles to trade up. I think it's all going to be whether Chip Kelly, who's got some more responsibilities now, he makes more decisions with personnel. I think whether he thinks he can get a good bargain and go up and get his guy, as a lot of people like to say, I think he's definitely going to do it, but I don't think he's going to go to the extreme limits people think he will. I think a couple of draft picks maybe a player like Nick Foles. I know Vinny Curry is a pretty good defensive lineman who doesn't really fit Billy Davis' system on the defense. He's a 4-3 D-end who's a good pass rusher, good with run support. He doesn't really fit into their system. He's kind of underrated in a sense. So he could definitely be a good trade asset, along with Nick Foles, like I mentioned. But I don't think that the Eagles are going to trade up because I don't think they really need the quarterback right now. I think they've got some other issues that they really need to focus on, most notably the secondary. They have the worst passing defense in the NFL. So I think that's definitely going to be an area of focus in this draft. And that being said, it still is possible. I just don't think it's likely to happen.
Yeah, I couldn't agree any more with you on that. I don't believe it's going to happen either. And, you know, to shed light on what you said about the defense, they were 31st in the NFL in passing yards allowed. They need to fix that problem first before they fix any problem with the quarterback, which I don't believe needs to be fixed at all. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the Philadelphia Eagles, a lot of Philadelphia people on this show, so I'm sure we'll all be waited with bated breath to see what happens with Marcus Mariota and that saga. Word coming out of the Combine, though, is his interviews were just fantastic. He really blew a lot of teams away with his maturity, with his sense of personality, and really good for Marcus Mariota. We'll see where he lands in the NFL draft. But let's go ahead and talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers and their defense. Some aging players on that defense, of course, Troy Polamalu, Ike Taylor, James Harrison, just a few names that fit that mold. It appears the Steelers are going to go with another defensive player this year in the NFL draft. So which players do you think the Steelers have their eye on here in the Combine in Indianapolis?
I think, as we just talked about, the Philadelphia Eagles having their share of struggles in the secondary, let's cross the state. The Steelers have just as much, if not more, moving forward. Philly does have some younger players like Earl Wolf in their secondary, who I guess could grow into something. But the Steelers are like you said, an aging secondary. They had a lot of problems last year defending the pass. I think one guy that they could definitely have their eye on would be P.J. Williams, a cornerback from Florida State. He's a big, physical, and fast cornerback. I think he can definitely fill in for an Ike Taylor type of player moving forward, because Ike Taylor and Troy Polamalu, guys like that, aren't going to be around much longer, so it's time for them to start rebuilding, especially with the departure of Dick LeBeau. I think this is definitely a good chance for them to get younger in their secondary, and moving forward, I think that's definitely going to benefit them as a total defense.
Yeah, I agree with you on the standpoint of they need a new cornerback. Ike Taylor, he was an all right cornerback, I'll give him that. But I believe that maybe Trey Waynes from Michigan State or Jalen Collins from LSU, I believe that will really boost Pittsburgh, give them what they need, and maybe they can go back and get to the playoffs again.
Absolutely. I think, like you said, Trey Waynes is probably the best cornerback in this upcoming draft class. I think it's going to be really, really important that if he doesn't get selected before, I think the Steelers definitely have to look into him, because he's got playmaking abilities like no other cornerback in this year's class.
Yeah, and whatever the Steelers do, no matter what side of the ball they go on, they need to really start getting these drafts right. There have been a couple of years in a row, their first-round picks and a lot of their early-round picks haven't really panned out, haven't contributed too much. They need to start building that younger foundation, getting younger and moving along that way. But let's move on to some individual performances. Of course, plenty of owners, scouts alike swarming to Indianapolis for the Combine, and they saw quite a performance out of 6'3" wide receiver Kevin White out of West Virginia. Really tremendous numbers at the Combine. Do you think there are any teams pursuing Kevin White, and do you think his stock has risen so much that he may get taken ahead of Amari Cooper, who was rated as the #1 receiver prospect for the majority of the season?
I think that still holds true now. I think Amari Cooper is the best receiver in this upcoming class. Kevin White is an incredible receiver. Big, strong, fast. Definitely going to be coveted by teams this year in need of playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. I think, again, if I'm going to use the New York Jets, if they can't seem to figure out the quarterback situation in this draft, and they do stick with Geno Smith, I think adding Kevin White will be huge for them. I think he's going to be able to grow and learn the game in a really, really good receiving core when healthy, and if they can get the ball out to them with Eric Decker and Percy Harvin. I think it's definitely going to be a wise choice for the Jets if they can pick up Kevin White. I don't think he falls out of the top 10 if the Jets don't take him. But Amari Cooper is by far the best and most ready, I think, receiver in this year's class.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I couldn't agree more with you about Amari Cooper. There's no contest. He is going to go first. He's going to go before Kevin White. Kevin White, whenever he came in 2013 to West Virginia, he had a shaky start. 2014, he was a beast. I'll be honest with you, he was. But he still needs to work on his footwork and a couple other things, and Amari Cooper's got it all figured out, so he's definitely going to go before that. But anyways, Kevin White, I do believe, if he were to get picked up, I believe a team like the Browns, it would be a perfect asset. Speaking about immaturity, we got Josh Gordon.
Yeah, especially in light of that, with Josh Gordon's issues, I think that would definitely be a great pickup as well.
Definitely. The Chiefs, Dwayne Bowe, we don't know if he's going to stay or if he's going to go. And if he stays, that's great. He adds. Kevin White will add to the team, be a great #2 wide receiver, and if he goes, well, Kevin White will be ready, I believe, to take on the role of #1. I think.
And that's the thing about wide receiver in the NFL. There is a little bit of a learning curve. It is a tough position to come into. So I think going to a team like any of the ones you just mentioned with an experienced veteran receiver that he can kind of learn from a little bit, I think that'll definitely benefit him in the long haul.
Yeah, no question about it. And in today's day and age in the NFL, with passing being the focus, wide receivers probably coveted more now than ever. So there will be plenty of teams bidding for Kevin White's services, and we will see where he lands. The NFL draft just a few months away here, and we will be following it all the way here on The Big Hit for Sean Fritz and Andrew Friend. My name is Josh Hill. We're going to take a break and come back and talk some IUP Crimson Hawks basketball. The PSAC tournament is coming up, and we'll have a preview for you when we return right here on The Big Hit. And welcome back to the show, ladies and gentlemen, talking some IUP Crimson Hawks basketball now in the Crimson Huddle. We're so happy you've joined us with Sarah Moltz and Will Gaucher. We're going to begin here talking with the IUP men's basketball team, of course, sitting at 3rd place in the PSAC Western Division right now. 1 game left on its regular season schedule on a Wednesday against Clarion. This, of course, being recorded the night before on a Tuesday. Is this where you expected IUP to be right now?
In my opinion, I definitely think IUP has gone the way they have been. I do expect this. I've found I think there's a couple of downfalls to our team so far, as much as I don't like to say that. Our defense has been relaxed. We haven't really been off to a good start. Just our size, I've noticed a lot of, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but our size has been really just defeating us. I looked at some of the guys on these teams that we've lost to Slippery Rock, to Edinburgh, they're huge. You know, there's like 2 guys that are under 6 foot, and that's just dominating our team. So I think that this is something that I've expected. I wish it was more, but I do have hope for our team.
And like you had talked about, they let people stay around in games. I really remember that Edinburgh game. Those guys were in that game too much, and it didn't go down to the wire like how it was planning out to be. I could see it playing out that way, but then they pulled away. They always find a way to just pull away. Gannon finished at the top of the division last year. I kind of felt that they would again. I mean, they have a couple players up there that I'm familiar with from that area. Adam Blazik, he really puts on a show, but third place, I guess, it's all right.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And like you talking about, you know, they were the defense. I mean, we have the defense. You know, we're able to, you know, put up some points on offense, and we're able to stop the ball on some defense. But they've just been too relaxed. I feel like they just have not. They start off strong, but then they end weak. And I think that that's something that we definitely need to work on. That's something that needs to be
going in a tournament.
Exactly.
You cannot
exactly.
finish weak.
So that's something that definitely needs to be worked for towards in the playoffs.
Yeah, it's kind of been a roller coaster ride for IUP. Of course, going into the season, the experts picking Gannon to finish first in the PSAC West, of course, returning 4 starters. But as the season goes along, IUP beats Gannon on their home court. It looks like they're in a position to win the PSAC, perhaps even host the Atlantic region, but then they dropped 2 to Edinburgh and Mercyhurst. So that really took them down a notch, and they're still trying to get back to that. But looking at this IUP team, it's very interesting to see what the bigs are able to do, because they have a big impact, no pun intended, on what happens for the IUP Crimson Hawks. Devon Cottrell, Daddy Ubede splitting time in the starting lineup this season. And they've had some impressive numbers. Devon Cottrell especially, and Daddy Ubede is really starting to come around as far as scoring is concerned as well. So which of these guys do you think is more important to IUP success, Devon Cottrell or Daddy Ubede?
They're both great. I just want to say to start off, I think they've both been doing tremendous this season. But I would have to go with Daddy. Looking at some of the stats, his percentage in field goals and free throws have been higher than Devon Cottrell's. And last game at Pitt Johnstown, Daddy had 20 points, 2 blocks, and he was 4 for 5 in free throws. And when you look at Devon's stats in Pitt Johnstown, he only had 8 points and 2 blocks. So I'm just going off of a couple of games. Daddy has been ahead a little bit more. Plus, Daddy has more points. I believe that he has 308 compared to Devon's 104. So I would definitely go with Daddy. They're both great, like I said, but when splitting time and being in the center position, I would have to go with Daddy.
Yes, I'm right along with you. Daddy is definitely getting it done. His field goal percentage you touched on is through the roof. 67% is, wow, that's incredible. And he's getting to the line about 5 times a game. If you wanted to go defensive, I guess you can say Devon, he has more blocks, but you can't win the game. I mean, you can win a game off of defense, but you score.
It's the points that really matter in this type of situation, especially in the playoffs. You want someone who is going to be able to score those points for you, and that is going to be Daddy in this situation.
Definitely.
Yeah, Daddy Ubede, of course, coming off his first career double-double. Sarah, you mentioned it a bit last Saturday at Pitt Johnstown. And for Devon Cottrell, it's really impressive what he's been able to do when Daddy Ubede gets into foul trouble, because there have been some early foul trouble. The Slippery Rock game, for example, Daddy Ubede played about 6 minutes. Devon Cottrell came in, only scored 1 or 2 points, but he had a couple of blocks and had a nice performance as far as rebounding is concerned. So when Daddy's not in his game, Devon Cottrell's the next man up, and he has done a outstanding job so far this season. But we're going to switch over to the IUP women's basketball team. But one more note about the IUP men getting back in the top 25, now ranked 24th in the nation. So let's move on to the IUP women, because the results on Saturday certainly favor the IUP Crimson Hawks, put them back into first place in the PSAC West, also put them in the driver's seat to host the Atlantic Region tournament. But the standing suggests that the Crimson Hawks are the best team in the conference, at least if you look at it. But Bloomsburg is atop the PSAC East. And California is also lurking in the PSAC West. Cal at 18-3, Bloomsburg at 19-2. So which of these two teams is the biggest threat? for IUP?
Well, looking back at those couple of games, I'd have to say that Cal is definitely the biggest threat. You look back to that game, even though I don't like to look back at that game, and neither do we as a whole, but the team we just shut down. And I'm not sure what exactly might have happened. They just dominated over us, but I don't think that's going to stop us at all. I think that we have the opportunities ahead of us to beat Cal, but in between two, like I said, I think Cal was definitely going to be something that we're going to have to watch for. Like I said, going back to that game, we just lost control. We just got dominated. I don't remember what the score was exactly, but I think it was like they had 60 or 70, we had like 30 or 40. And those are the types of losses that we can't afford to lose, But I think that these ladies actually kind of needed that loss to kind of be like, okay, this is a reality check. Now we're getting back on. We're moving next to the next game, and they're ready. So I think that when we meet Cal again, it might be a whole new experience for us.
Yeah, you had touched on that home loss. It was by, I do hate to say this too, because I love my IUP basketball, but 31 points at home at that. And that's just unacceptable. But I believe that they will handle Cal. As you had said, Cal's losses did come earlier in the season, which I guess they were having some chemistry issues. But Stamp and Stoner will get it done when they are called upon, because they always do. That is something that that you can count on. So I know that they're not worried about Cal. I mean, they let 2 go. That's regular season. Now it's time to gear up and get ready for these playoffs.
Yeah, and these ladies have been tremendous. I just love watching them. I think that everyone should come out and support them. I think everyone should come out and support anyone. This women team, the starting 5, have been just phenomenal these past couple of games. I can't even,
the ball movement is incredible.
Exactly.
Really, seriously.
And they've been doing so well, and I think that I can just see the way that they handle each game. They don't really focus on that game as much as they focus on the next game. And that's something really important that a team needs to do. And that's what I find the most fascinating about them, the coaching too, as well, is that they just keep moving forward. They're not looking back. So looking forward ahead to the playoffs, looking forward to Cal, if anything, that's going to be the biggest step. And I think that we can be able to do that with our starting 5, not only the starting 5, but just our whole entire team in general.
Yeah, and it's important to note that the new coaching staff has really done some great work. Jacqueline Babe, Kelly Mazzanti have been tremendous, and you had both mentioned it. Look at the head-to-heads. California seems like the bigger threat. It is tough to beat the same team 3 times in 1 year. It's tough to beat the same team twice in 1 year. IUP putting up 45 points against California, their lowest output of the entire season. Really a tough game. California seems to have their number, but with the PSAC tournament being out east this year, you never know what may happen. But let's look at the Crimson Hawks on the defensive end, because they've been tremendous all season long. They allow only 56 points per game on defense, but looking back to this past road trip for IUP against Edinburgh and Slippery Rock, they allowed 81 and 77 points respectively in back-to-back games. So is there any concern to this? The numbers seem to be creeping up a bit. Crimson Hawks still getting it done, though.
I don't think there's as too much concern as I think there should be. I think, like I said, they should just keep playing the way they've been playing. Yeah, those numbers, like you said, Josh, do keep creeping up on us, but I think it's just something that we just need to keep moving forward to. I don't think that this is something we should stress as much as other things that we could be stressing on, like for the men's team, as we mentioned, not being as relaxed on defense. Just a couple of those things that I think that there's more important things that we should focus on more than just those couple of points.
Mm-hmm. I definitely agree. I think when you get down to the end of a season, that's when you relax a little bit, something. You looking forward to maybe resting some people, not playing people as many minutes. But allowing that amount of points, back-to-back games, that was a little bit of a signal like, whoa, maybe we need to get this back in order, do something different in practice, anything, because 81 points that's unacceptable for what we know that they can output. So I do think that it's a bit of a concern, but no red flags are going up.
Yeah, and it's important to date what this episode is, recorded on a Tuesday right before the Clarion game on a Wednesday, so a final regular season game for both the IUP men and the IUP women. Come on out, bring a friend if you can't. Crimson Hawk Sports Network has you covered. WIUP-FM will also be broadcasting the games live as well. And then it's tournament time for the IUP Crimson Hawks. Saturday, the men take the floor, and then on Tuesday, the women will take the floor for the PSAC tournament. So an exciting time here at IUP. We're excited. I hope you are too. That's going to do it here for the Crimson Huddle. For Sarah Moltz and Will Gaucher, ladies and gentlemen, start your engines, get on in the fast lane, because we are going to be talking some NASCAR, the Daytona 500, and a lot more when we return right here on The Big Hit. And welcome back into the Big Hit, ladies and gentlemen, and we're going to shift our focus to a sport we rarely cover here on the Big Hit, talking some NASCAR in our Speedway review, and joining us for that, it's the man of the hour, Cowboy Kurt, and Malusi Kitchen. Guys, let's go ahead and start with the Daytona 500, the biggest race of the year, and really where the NASCAR calendar starts. Joey Logano, the victor in the Daytona 500, he heads to victory lane. Tremendous race for Joey Logano. Were you surprised that he won the Daytona 500?
I was very surprised. You know, I really thought that Jeff Gordon, who had the pole, ran well at the beginning of the race. I really thought that he was going to be able to hold it off and win that race. But then I looked back, and when I was watching the race, Joey Logano was right there. Like when Gordon was leading the race, Joey Logano, I think the furthest he was behind Gordon was 5th place. So Joey Logano had a fast car. And, you know, I was surprised, but then again, I'm not. You know, Joey Logano is one of the new drivers he's very young, but he is able to compete with these veterans at these types of events. So I wasn't really surprised, you know, because he is a good driver. But yeah, I was good for him. Good for Joey Logano.
Yeah, I was absolutely surprised. You don't really expect, especially in a race of this magnitude, for young drivers to step up in this type of situation and be able to compete at such a high level with all these great racers, like you said, Jeff Gordon, Jimmy Johnson. I mean, these guys are just pros. So the fact that he was able to come, and the interesting thing you mentioned about Jeff Gordon, he led the race 6 times in the Daytona 500 for a race best 87 laps. Yeah. So it was very impressive for Joey Logano to come out and with the win, which is a good start.
Yeah, it was a good start. You know, and that's what he needed, because like at the end of the last season with the new Chase bracket, he was 3 points away from beating Kevin Harvick in that last race at Homestead. So it was interesting to see him pick up right where he left off and get this win at Daytona. He started off the season very well.
Yeah, and after that performance at Homestead, his confidence was lacking. He said he wasn't really too confident. He didn't really like the way his car was running, didn't like the feel of his car. So he got to the film room, he put his head down, he went to work, he and his crew, and you look and you get a Daytona 500 victory. Certainly something that can elevate a career, put somebody into another stratosphere of NASCAR's elite. But you look at the points race, Logano's at the top after that Daytona 500 victory, currently leads with 47. So is he the best the sport has to offer today, Joey Logano?
Respectfully, no. Joey Logano is one of them young drivers, like I said before, who is very talented. But he is not the best that the sport has. In my opinion, I do believe that Jimmy Johnson is still the best that the sport has to offer right now. You know, every race that he's in, he's always a big favorite, you know, and he is very talented, and he's always in the best shape. Him and his crew chief, Chad Knaus, are always in click, always in sync. No matter what it is, they always work out problems if they have him on the track. So I don't believe that Joey Logano is the best in NASCAR right now, but I definitely think he's in, I would say, the top 5. I would definitely agree that he's in the top 5.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. Jimmy Johnson is definitely the top of tier, especially since the way Jeff Gordon hasn't really performed here in these last few years. He's definitely, his racing is like downplayed a little bit. He hasn't, been able to finish the way he wanted to. And Jimmy Johnson has been very consistent in these last few years and winning very important races. So I think he's definitely the top racer right now. But like you said, Joey Logano is on his way to becoming I don't want to call it a superstar, but a great racer here in the coming years to come, especially since all these guys like Jeff Gordon, like you said, is not getting younger. And I just think he's really a great prospect for this sport. He's really going to take this sport somewhere, and it's going to be exciting.
Yeah, and I know his team owner, Roger Penske, they call him the GOAT, the greatest of all time. So that's incredible to have that type of nickname from Roger Penske, one of the biggest names in NASCAR. So, look out for him. Look out for him. He's just getting started.
Yeah, and as far as NASCAR is concerned, it's really one era kind of leaving, another era certainly coming up, and of course with the Nationwide Series, a lot of talented young racers there. But let's talk about a racer who is on the way out, the number 24 car, Jeff Gordon. He announced he's going to retire at the end of the season. Hasn't had a very good year. A late wreck at the Daytona 500 didn't help matters very much. Does his final season tarnish his legacy at all? He's been having a rough year. Still a lot of racing to do, though. Absolutely not.
Jeff Gordon is still one of the faces of NASCAR. With everything that he has accomplished, he has 92 wins in his career. He has 78 poles, and he's a four-time championship winner. No matter how he could end up getting, he could wreck every single race. He is still going to be named one of the best NASCAR racers in the history. You know, no matter what, like the things that he's done for the sport, how his attitude on and off the track, he does get a little fired up, as most drivers do anytime you wreck into him, but he keeps it calm and collective, and he's still, no matter what, his legacy is always going to be great.
Yeah, I think you can't really take away his final season and let that define his entire legacy. I think what he's done over his career has definitely outweighed what he's done like this past season. It's definitely shown, but like you said, the amount of work that he's put in over the time of his career and really helped the NASCAR sport is phenomenal. I mean, you can't really take away anything from the guy, and it's not, you know, people say it's not how you start, it's how you finish, but it really doesn't matter for Jeff Gordon, because he's, like you said, he's already a Hall of Famer, and what he's done for the sport, like I said, is just unbelievable. He's, like you said, the reason why some people know NASCAR is because of Jeff Gordon.
Oh yeah,
so
he's definitely one of the. When you look at like NASCAR today, and even back in the '90s, Jeff Gordon is one of the top, like most popular American drivers. You know, granted, right now it's still Dale Earnhardt Jr., but Gordon's right up there with him. And, you know, no matter what, Gordon's legacy will live on forever.
And I do want to just note, Cowboy Kurt looks a little bit like Dale Earnhardt Jr., so maybe he can take over on the NASCAR scene. There you go. Jeff Gordon, though, tremendous career. His career certainly speaks for itself. Hopefully he can pick up a couple of wins closing the season out late here and go out on top. But let's go ahead and take a look at some other younger drivers. Danica Patrick confronting Denny Hamlin after the race, and of course there were several cameras around, plenty of cameras in Daytona. Do you believe that she overreacted? This is kind of a part of NASCAR, drivers getting fired up sometimes in the heat of the moment.
No, I don't think she overreacted. You know, in both Sprint Unlimiteds, the very first one, she got into an accident. And the second one, excuse me, her and Denny Hamlin were going at it, and Denny Hamlin got on her left rear quarter panel and spun her out. I don't think he meant to do it on purpose. But, and you know, Robin's racing. That's the way it is. But what I like about this situation, though, is after that race when Danica did approach Denny Hamlin was not fighting back with her. He was letting her get all of her anger out. And then after she had her little feud, they calmed down. He invited her back into his mobile home, and they talked things out. And I think that was a real class act, you know, because that's something Denny Hamlin very rarely, I think, would do, but that shows how mature this driver is and how much he cares about the sport and the drivers. And I really thought that was a class act by Denny Hamlin.
Yeah, I don't think it's a real reaction. I think for any sport, you know, when you care about and you're passionate about something, you're going to get heated in the moment. You know, sometimes you might say things you don't regret, but I don't think that was the situation here. I think they handled themselves very well, and even though Danica was upset, I mean, I think she could see, like, after they had talked, like you said, they went to the mobile home, that, you know, it wasn't intentional. Mm-hmm. But I definitely think that people try to make it more than it really is, and it really wasn't anything. You know, it was just two great racers trying to, you know, win, and they just got caught in the heat of the moment, but I'm glad they resolved it very quickly.
Yeah, that Daytona 500, certainly a very entertaining race, going 3 wide the majority of the time, just tremendous racing, very high quality of a race. And let's go ahead and talk about another big name in the world of NASCAR, Jimmie Johnson. He was coming into pit row a little bit too early, had to let everybody pass him there. He's been relatively quiet after his 5 consecutive series championships from the years 2006 to 2010. Is he anywhere near the driver he once was? Just seems like Jimmie Johnson can't put it together right now.
See, I don't think that there's nothing wrong with Jimmie Johnson the way he's racing. And to bring up about that pit road penalty that he had, NASCAR now has brand new pit road technology where each pit stall has a camera where up top on the track where they can actually see how many people are on the track fixing the car, how many they're allowed, and when they can actually cross over the barrier to work on the car for safety reasons. That's one thing that NASCAR has been doing a lot better at, is protecting the drivers and the crew members. But to go back to Jimmy Johnson does have those races where he starts off well and then something just doesn't work. He gets into an accident or there's a problem with the car. But he's still one of those top competitors where if you bet on Jimmy Johnson, you're not going to – he will I apologize, but he is very good. Okay, let's just say this. There's nothing wrong with Jimmy Johnson and how he will race in a couple races. Everybody is not going to finish first every single race of the season. So I definitely think that Jimmy Johnson has not lived up to where he was when he won the last championship in 2010. But I don't think he's very far behind from where he was at. I definitely think he's got more potential coming up in the season.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think, I don't want to call it his prime, but sometimes, you know, in any sport, sometimes you just get on a rhythm and you just have those great runs. And, you know, for sports example, like they have different waves. You know, you're not going to experience success throughout your entire career. So I think it's going to be very hard for people to maintain him to keep up that level of like productivity. You know, so I don't think like I agree with you. I don't think he's like at that level, at prime level when he went from 2006, 2010, where he was just winning, you know, back to back to back. But I think, you know, he's still a very highly tough competitor, and he's one of the best racers here in NASCAR.
He's definitely one of the hardest workers that I've ever seen too. You know, I've watched YouTube videos of this guy and his crew in the gym, working out, doing drills. Like, it's incredible how great of shape not only the drivers are, but the crew members for a sport that you wouldn't think you would need shape for. No, you need it. You know, it's like you try sitting in a car for 4 hours going 200 miles per hour.
Tough.
Yeah,
it will take a toll on you.
It weighs on you for sure. And I think another perspective to look at this whole Jimmy Johnson thing is kind of look outward to the rest of the talent and the pool of talent in NASCAR. I think NASCAR is becoming much more of a competitive sport. There's a lot more guys that have a lot more talent, especially now more so than back in the day with Jimmy Johnson dominating. But that's all the time we have here. Talking NASCAR here in our Speedway review. I think I speak for both Cowboy Kurt and Malusi Kitchen when I say we live life in the fast lane, we live at the speed of light, and we don't slow down. That's all the time we have here. We're going to move and talk some NBA when we get back and close the show out. We're talking NBA right here on The Big Hit. Don't go away. And welcome back into the final segment here this evening here on The Big Hit, talking some National Basketball Association as we crash the boards with Dakota London and Vaughn Dalzell. Guys, let's jump right in. A lot going on in the NBA. Really so much happening in the trade deadline. Just past 37 players traded from team to team. Which teams do you have as the biggest winners and losers after the trade deadline has come and gone?
I'll start with the losers. I think for me, the loser, and they've been losing all season, is the 76ers. For a team that is in the midst of some very dark days and a very big media outlet, to give up Michael Carter-Williams is kind of rough. I didn't agree with that at all. I thought that he was the only bright light for that organization, and to give him up, in my opinion, was a huge mistake. I'm going to go for my winner. I'll have to go with OKC. Getting Enes Kanter is a huge plus for them, considering that they don't really have a big man in the middle that, you know, could actually be a big man. Mm-hmm. The fact that, you know, your power forward takes threes, this shows that they're a perimeter team. And it's been actually a big problem for them the last couple of years that when they play teams that can get inside on them, they have some struggles. But that's my biggest winner, that's my biggest losers. I really think the 76ers giving up Michael Carter-Williams was actually a very big loss.
Yeah, I agree with you. I didn't see what they were doing with that trade because they already had good big men, and they came in and brought JaVale McGee back. So I thought that was a lost step for the Sixers. But I do like the fact you pointed out the Thunder got some with Enes Kanter. I thought that was a very good trade. And I thought the biggest loser was the Suns because they lost Isaiah Thomas and Dragic. And I think the Heat were the biggest winners getting Dragic because they had the most to gain because of it. Right. A weak Eastern Conference and them getting them, if they get to a 4 or 5 seed, they can make a run at it just because the Eastern Conference is so weak. But I think the Dragic, Wade, and Luol Deng is a good combination. If they had Chris Bosh for the season, sad to see him lost. I think they could be a pretty competitive team in the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, also a nice trade deadline for the Milwaukee Bucks. Of course, sending Brandon Knight away, but getting some nice pieces in return. But as we approach the second half of the NBA season, that can only mean one thing, and that is that the All-Star Weekend has come and gone, and that it has. Let's take a quick recap of the All-Star Weekend and look at some positives to take away and some negatives from the All-Star Weekend as well.
Well, I thought it was pretty good, especially considering Zach LaVine's performance in the dunk contest. I thought that was fantastic. I don't know if it necessarily revived the dunk contest, but it was good to see that get some positive publicity. I thought the three-point contest was phenomenal. They had a very good core in that. All those players, if you think about it, had a fair chance of winning that. I think Steph Curry's performance was to be expected, as dangerous as a shooter as he is. So I think that was a good part. I think the game was competitive, but it's hard to really take All-Star games serious because you know that for the most part the players just aren't putting in as much of an effort. I think it's more so about the amount of money that it brings in. It was entertaining to watch to some extent, but after a while you kind of just lost interest. But that would probably be my only negative. I think overall for that weekend, they were pretty successful. I think if there was any way you could add some more competitiveness in the actual game itself, then the weekend would be that much better. But I think overall they did pretty well.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. The three-point contest was the best of All-Star Weekend for me. The dunk contest started to become a little bit of a lost cause. I didn't like who they had in. I thought Mason Plumlee was not deserving of being in. He's a big man that's kind of limited in his dunking range. Right. But Zach LaVine did have one of the best dunk contests of the century for us so far, I believe. But the All-Star game, it's not competitive. It's just a bunch of dunks and threes and a couple guys playing one-on-one. I honestly have more fun watching the Celebrity All-Star game than the All-Star game sometimes for the NBA. So that's how it is. But that's how guys don't want to get injured, so they're not going to play their hearts out for an All-Star game, just like the Pro Bowl and other sports.
Yeah, it sucks. I just think that's pretty much a consensus for all sports now. It's really not worth the risk. I mean, I think in for the terms of the NBA, of all the sports, that probably has the least amount of injury worries. But even then, if you land on your ankle the wrong way, that could mess up your team's entire season. So, is it starting to get pointless? Does it make money? Yeah. So are they going to keep doing it? Yeah. But.
Yeah, and very interesting to see Monet Davis with that nasty spin around Kevin Hart, and of course Victor Oladipo, shorter guy, putting in that work in the dunk contest. Very interesting to see that as well. But All-Star Weekend, of course, gone. We'll have to wait until next year for it. But looking back here on the court, LeBron James passed Allen Iverson for 22nd on the all-time scoring list on Sunday in Cleveland's game, and he's well within reach with a couple of other players on the list as well. So when it's all said and done, where do you think LeBron will end up on the list in terms of scoring?
I absolutely think top 5. LeBron's skill set is just one of a kind, and I think more so recently because he's tried to make his physical point scoring as minimal as possible. He's become more of a shooter. He doesn't go up for the crazy dunks if he doesn't have to. He tries to protect his body, but listen, your career 27-7-7. He could score 35 a game if he wanted to, but because he's just such an unselfish player, he only scores about maybe 27, 29 tops. He could absolutely, I see him being in the top 5. The way his body is built, he could handle the amount of abuse he gets on the court. Like I said, he's not taking as much damage as he did when he was younger. He's realized that he needed to change his game a little bit, similar to what Kobe did in his later years. So I absolutely can see him being in the top 5 because I think he'll play for at least another 6-7 years.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely see him being on the Mount Rushmore points there. And I think he could surpass a lot of players. Jordan's tough, Will Chamberlain's tough. Kobe's there. I think if LeBron can finish out his career healthy, unlike how Kobe is right now, then LeBron could be up there. He could surpass him and everything, but it's going to be tough because health's a big risk. You have to have guys around you to support yourself too.
Absolutely.
So it'll be interesting to see, but yeah, we're both in agreement here. Top 5 for sure.
Yeah, I think if they keep a good core around him for the next couple of years, and I think as the older he gets, wherever he is, hopefully he's in Cleveland, but if wherever he's playing with, they know, like, okay, we have to keep him with a good core because we don't want to put too much on him the order he gets. So, yeah.
Yeah, health certainly a big concern, and the long playoff runs that LeBron James is accustomed to can really help him out in terms of getting by some players on the all-time scoring list. But let's look at a team in the Western Conference that has been a little bit up and down this year, and they're riding a high right now. The Oklahoma City Thunder not struggling without Kevin Durant. He's on the sideline, but Russell Westbrook is really doing some good things, putting up career numbers when you look at it. Does this automatically hurt Kevin Durant's legacy to see the Thunder doing so well, led by Russell Westbrook?
I think it may hurt his legacy in terms of how the Thunder value him. I've said for some time now that I thought in terms of attitude and personality that Russell was the alpha male of that team. You can see how he plays. He plays with a lot of passion, and you see it now. And for years, you've just been waiting for the instance where if KD was not in the lineup, Russell would take over. And now he has an opportunity, and he's making the absolute most out of it. With there being some concerns about KD possibly going to Washington, goes back to his hometown. So I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I do believe KD is still the better of the two, but you can't discount the amount of success Russell was having with KD out of the lineup. So it'll be interesting. Like I said, I don't think it'll hurt his legacy in terms of how his players around the league see him, but I think of how OKC as the organization values him with Russell doing as well as he is, that may cause some concerns.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting how last season they were all complaining that Westbrook was the reason why the Thunder couldn't win, and now it's this season they're starting to talk about how Westbrook can win without Durant.
Right.
But at the end of the day, I think Durant and Westbrook want to be on the same team. They want to be together. I mean, they're arguably the best 1 and 2 duo in the NBA right now.
Right.
And I think they need each other for a championship, but they also need some core players around them. It's interesting, but I don't think it hurts their legacy at all. I just think the fact that if Westbrook is starting to be more valued now, being second in the NBA in scoring, fifth in assists, that they might let Durant walk to Washington if they want, but ultimately they're going to want him there. But as you said, it's pretty appeasing to him. You see Cleveland was appeasing to LeBron, so you never know, but we'll just see where the spotlight goes with those two.
Yeah, and for Oklahoma City trying to put themselves in title contention, very appropriate for our next question here as we wind down the NBA season. Which team do you believe is the biggest dark horse to win the NBA Finals at this point in the season?
I think that's a hard one because I'm not sure there's really a technical dark horse the way that this season is playing out. I guess if there was anyone, I would have to say Memphis, because you can't discount a team that just plays solid defense on a nightly basis and they have playoff experience. But the West is so close, it's hard to say, well, this team is a dark horse or that team is a dark horse. And even with the top teams in the East, you could say, well, can you really call Atlanta a dark horse? Not really, and you can't call Cleveland a dark horse. You can't even call the Bulls a dark horse. So it's hard to give someone the term a dark horse. But if I had to choose, it would have to be Memphis because they're not being talked about as much. But like I said, they have playoff experience. They're a team that plays good defense, and when you get to the playoffs, that's the most important thing.
Yeah, it's tough to say that because the Western Conference is so close-knit right now, but when I think of a dark horse, I think of a team outside the top four, and there's only two teams in the West that really catch my eye, and that would be the Houston Rockets because they're playing so well right now without Dwight Howard, and James Harden's putting up MVP numbers. And the other team I would like is the San Antonio Spurs. They're a 7 seed right now. And every year they're going to make a deep playoff run. They have the system down packed. They know how to win a championship. So if we had to label those two as a dark horse, then those would be the teams I'd go with. But I don't think there would be any in the East because, as you spoke on, Chicago's a 3, Cleveland's a 4. And those really aren't dark horse teams. Those are championship teams to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And NBA season winding down. We'll certainly be following it the rest of the way. That's all the time we have here for the NBA Crash of the Boards. That's all the time we have here for the Big Hit as well. We urge you to follow us on Twitter for all of the latest updates. For directors Michael Mattingly Martone, Malusi Kitchen, Kyle Condor, our camera operators, Randy Epstein, Marcus Hawkins, and Logan Custer. For Dakota London and Vaughn Dalzell, myself, and Shaq, we will see you right back here next week on the Big Hit.